And good morning, everybody, and a very warm welcome to our Sunday Divine Service. Today we have a wonderful guest and speaker with us, Mark Stewart from Scotland. Mark, good morning to you, sir.
Good morning. Hope you understand me with the accent.
It's absolutely lovely. I really love accents. I love all these different accents. It's beautiful. Mark is joining us from Bowness in Scotland this morning, so thank you very much for setting this time aside to help us and to be with us today. If
It's
I
my
could ask,
pleasure.
Wonderful. If I could ask you, please, Mark, to open up our service in prayer, after which we will all say the Lord's Prayer together, if it suits. Thank you, Mark.
Okay. If everybody would please like to join me, eyes and hands clasped. Dear Father, Mother Spirit, thank you very much for bringing us all together. Thank you very much for helping to support people across the world in every and any way that you are doing so. I would like, however, to take this moment in prayer to send a special thank you to everyone in the spiritualist movement who is not a medium or who is a medium but does work that is not what I would describe as mediumship, keeping the doors open of the churches that will reopen in the future, helping to support people in so many ways that you never hear about it, helping to channel spiritual power and practicality. Because we often forget that, like the parable of the man that was told he was going to be saved in the flood, and he stood on his roof waiting for a miracle, and everybody passed by with boats and cars offering to rescue him, and he kept saying, "Spirit is going to rescue me." And then when he got to the pearly gates and he wasn't let in because there had been miracles, Spirit had sent people to rescue him. People like the people that run this church, like Lawrence and other people whose names I don't know because I don't know your church well enough, please send your thanks to them. And please, any energy that we generate in this service, please use it appropriately to help somebody or people. Amen.
Amen. Thank you, Mark. That was beautiful. And now, if you'd like to join together and just say the Lord's Prayer as one. Our Father, who art in heaven, hallowed be thy name. Thy kingdom come, thine will be done, on earth as it is in heaven. Give us this day our daily bread, and forgive us our trespasses, as we forgive those who trespass against us. And leave us not when in temptation, but deliver us from evil. For thine is the kingdom, the powers, and the glory, for ever and ever. Amen. Wonderful. And now we'll move on to that part of the service for healing. Never forget, never underestimate your own powers as a healer. We are all spirit. We can all channel that energy. We can all channel that love. We can all give of ourselves to help and assist, and especially, of course, at this time. And never forget and never think it wrong to ask for healing for yourselves also, because if you're not well and 100%, how can you assist those who rely upon you? So we'll go into the healing time with some music and just link yourself in. Imagine in the center of all creation is a beautiful heart beating, and link in with that heartbeat and know that that love, that upliftment, and that healing energy working on the many forms and layers that compose our bodies will be worked with and will be received where there is a need and sent to those that we love dearly and indeed those we may not know ourselves. So we now enter in to that healing time. with those beautiful pictures and that beautiful music. Know that that healing embalmment has surrounded and uplifted you and gone forth to all those places where there is a need. Sorry, quick cough. Right, we're now going to go on to the hymn today. Today's hymn is especially chosen in honour of our guest today. I have pre-warned him, but he doesn't know what it is. So don't look so worried, Mark. It's wonderful. So if you'd just like to get your singing voices ready, please, and join in with our hymn today. It should be wonderful. Just get everything set up.
Wherever you may be, I am the Lord of the dance, says he, and I lead you all. Wherever you may be, and I lead you all in the dance, says he. I danced in the morning when the world begun. I danced in the moon, the stars and the sun. I danced on from heaven and I danced on the earth. Bethlehem I had my birth. I danced for the scribe and the Pharisees. They would not dance and they wouldn't follow me. I danced for the fishermen, James and John. They came with me and the dance went on. Dance, dance, wherever you may be. I am the Lord of the dance, says he, and I lead you all. Wherever you may be, and I lead you all in the dance, says he. I danced in the morning when the sky turned black. It's hard to dance with the devil on your back. They buried my body, but they thought I'd gone. I am the dance and I still go on. They cut me down, but I lift up high. I am the light that will never, never die. I'll live in you if you live in me. I am the Lord of the dance, said he. Dance, dance, wherever you may be. I am the Lord of the dance, says he, and I lead you all. Wherever you may be, and I lead you all in the dance, says he. Dance, dance, wherever you may be. I am the Lord of the dance, says he, and I lead you all, wherever you may be, and I lead you all in the dance, says he.
So, did you enjoy that, Mark?
Love it thoroughly. That's one of, as you probably worked out, I have the text of that on my website, so I think you made a reasonable guess in assuming that's one of my favourite hymns.
Yeah, I did double check just in case you'd written at the bottom, I really don't like this hymn, please never sing it to me. Mark, sir, I now hand over the rest of the service to your good self. If anybody has any questions, please place them in the comments box and we will tackle those as and when the opportunity arises. Mr. Mark Stewart, ladies and gentlemen.
Okay, hello. So, my name is Mark Stewart, and thank you very much to Lawrence for giving me the opportunity to spend a Sunday morning with you. My background, very quickly, I'm a church medium in a church in Scotland called the Dunfermline Spiritualist Church. Trained in circles in 2 churches, spent the last umpteen years working on church platforms all across Scotland, from Inverness all the way down to Glasgow and Edinburgh. On average, pre-virus, I was doing 2 to 2.5 churches a month doing the divine service. And then the virus hit. And obviously it has affected us all in so many ways, but the most obvious impact is the closing of churches. So to actually be here in a church that is organising an online service, it's wonderful. And I hope you inspire other churches to be doing the same. And even when we get out of the virus, I hope you continue doing this. I know I was watching the Andrew Marr show this morning, and there's a new virus, there's a new medical technique where they think they're going to get some super duper antiviral agent that's going to cure us all. That even when we get through this, I think things are going to take a long time to get back to the way they were. And I think we're all going to have to get used to a new normal, which really comes into what I'm going to talk about. Coming back to the pre-virus, in January, I was working as a medium in China, in the city of Xi'an. And then in March, for about 2 weeks, I was working as a medium in New York State and Chicago. Don't ask me which state that's in, I lose track of geography. Then I came home. I'm a type 1 diabetic. I literally got out of New York, Canada, because I flew back from Toronto the day before they put the ban on the flights. So what I'm going to talk about is my personal experiences and how I ended up in America and China working as a medium as well as Scotland, which is really just an analysis of spiritualism on the 3 continents, well, the country and the 2 continents. And I'm going to intersect that with a lot of personal background about myself and how spirit has taken a hammer and hit me on the head at various points. So let's start with China. To begin with, let me explain, my wife Ying is Chinese. I was hoping she was going to stick her head in the camera to say hello, but she's refused. Something about makeup, you know, these ladies. Also, to warn you, I have a very sarcastic sense of humor, so please take some of the way I express myself with a pinch of salt. We got married in a spiritualist church 10 years ago. Ying is from China, from the city of Xi'an, but she's British. She's been here for just under 2 decades. And her parents came from China to the wedding. Of course they did. And we put the honeymoon back by 6 months. And we decided to go on a honeymoon to Manhattan and then up to the city of Buffalo, Niagara Falls, which is on the Canadian border. Now, the reason for going there was business, because my background is I invest in property and I wanted to buy some property there. But that was also a very key location historically, because that's pretty much where, within a very short driving distance, an hour and a half. Now, just remember, this is America. Anything with a drive of under 2 hours is local. So that was an hour and a half's drive away from Hydesville, where the spiritualist movement actually started with the Fox sisters. So we naively made the assumption, oh, there's going to be so many spiritualist events, churches, you know, we'll do the historical tour as tourists going around spiritualism. And it didn't work out that way. I'll come back to that in a moment. Let me tell you a personal story about China, which really gives an example of what I'm talking about when I say that spirit will often give you a guiding hand, even when you don't realize it. Go back about 5 or 6 years into my past. I actually work in market research. And I was out in Glasgow, as you are, doing market research for a tobacco company, and the computer system wasn't working. Now, my mediumship career was really only just beginning. I was working in churches, but I didn't have the confidence that I needed to get up on platform and just put faith into spirit. I needed a slap across the face, a kick up the rear end, if you'll excuse the sarcasm again. And spiritualism did it to me. So I was sitting along with about 20 other employees in this big hall, and this woman from the other side of the hall gets up and walks across to me. She's just been speaking to my boss. She sits down beside me, says, "Hello, Mark." "Yeah, hello, my name is," I'm not going to name her in case she's watching. "You're a spiritualist, a medium, aren't you? Or so your boss says." "Yes." "How did you know?" "Oh, I'm a spiritualist as well." So we sat and talked for about 5 to 10 minutes. We compared notes for churches we knew. I mean, Scotland is a small place. Central Belt only has the two small cities, Edinburgh and Glasgow, Livingston in between. So in terms of spiritualism, you know, you maybe don't know the person, but you know somebody that knows them. So fine, 10, 15 minutes later, up she gets, walks away. Now she's getting down into her chair. Let me just, so she's in a position like this. Her backside is just about to reach the chair, and I get a text from my wife, Ying. Now, Ying goes home to China once a year, 3-4 weeks, Chinese New Year, and spends time with her family. Or her family go, her parents go on a tour, let's say of Europe or America, and she'll go with them. Now, the Chinese idea of a holiday is the bus drives into the town, everybody gets off the bus, does everything in the city in that day, gets back on the bus and drives to the next location overnight. Slight overemphasis there, but that's not my idea for a holiday. I like to be based in one place, go there every year, get to know every coffee shop, every bookshop, have a second life there, basically. So the two of us love each other totally, but to keep the marriage happy, we go on separate holidays. So I'm getting a text from her in China. Now, she's 8 hours ahead of me at this point. And it's a very simple request. "Mark, I'm out for a meal with 5 of my friends. Here's a picture I've just taken of one of them. Give her a reading." She's been talking about spiritualism, and I'll come back to that later on. Now, I've never done this before. I am, you know, mental mediumship. I need to hear your voice, stand in front of you on the church platform, or sit down with you to give you a one-on-one reading. The idea of getting a picture from somebody that I even speak the same language of and giving them a reading. So, do my best, type, send it off. Second picture arrives, second person. Do the same again, send it back. 5 pictures later, I get a text from my wife saying that she's totally flabbergasted at how accurate I am. All our 5 friends can't believe the information I've just given them. I mean, an example was I got a picture in my head of a French horn with a child, and this woman's child is having problems learning the French horn. So forget, I'm not doing this to say, "Oh, look at me." I'm doing this to illustrate the point that I needed that confidence boost. There I was, I just said to this woman, "Oh, I'm a medium," and immediately filled with self-doubt. She's sitting in her chair. Before she even gets back into the chair, from the other side of the world, my wife is reaching out to me with her friends to get readings, and I give 5 accurate readings. My confidence level went like that. And all of a sudden, the doors from churches started opening. Whereas maybe I was doing one church every 2 months at that point, within 2 to 3 months, I found myself booked solid. I found myself actually having to turn bookings down. And I'm not saying it's because I got that boost. I mean, okay, yes, churches saw me working and word got around, but Spirit wanted me to work on church platforms, and I needed the boost. And before they got people to open the doors to me, they gave me the injection in the arm that I needed. Now, how many times in your life has something like that happened? It's Spirit. It's called synchronicity. We all know what that means. If you don't know what that means, look it up on the website. But basically, it's being in the right place at the right time to get the right opportunity, meet the right person, or do the right thing for the other person, because it works both ways. Sometimes you will be pushed to be in the right place to do something for somebody else. It's not all self-centered. My wife had to be in the right place. Her friends had to be in the right place. And Spirit guided all of them to be, or guided my wife to organize that at exactly the second that I needed that boost. And it worked. So January, 4 or 5 years later, I felt I owed those people compensation, let's say. So there I was in China doing a psychic supper. And yeah, I mean, they all got perfect readings. They were all perfectly happy for it. I don't speak a word of Chinese, so my wife had to do all the translating for me. And the reaction from all of them was, oh, he must see some sort of vision from the West. They had no comprehension as to what spiritual mediumship was. Basically, there is no spiritualism that we would recognize as a movement in China. In fact, it goes even further than that. Anybody that has any contact with the Chinese knows that they're a very luck-orientated, superstitious. Go to any casino. Now, I like playing in casinos, so I'm familiar with this. I actually was supposed to be working on platform in the Grosvenor in Edinburgh in April, but obviously that had to get cancelled. So I'm used to seeing a lot of Chinese people in casinos, and they are very throw the dice. I'm sitting in a red chair. My wife helped me to choose that because red is a very lucky color for Chinese. So they pay a lot of attention to what you and I would recognize as frauds. You know, people that are fortune tellers that are going to tell you, you'll do this, you'll do that in the future, do this, so this is going to happen. So the Communist Party, the government, has they haven't made mediumship illegal, but any kind of astrology, anything that we would connect with, or that could be connected with spiritualism, is actually illegal. So let's put it this way. I wanted to take pictures of all my happy clients. I didn't charge them anything because I owed them. I wanted to take pictures of my friends having had their readings and put them up on my website. And I was told very directly by my wife and everybody around that table, no, don't do it because somebody in the party might have a look at your website and we don't want to be associated with anything that we could get into trouble with. Which I found very strange because if you think about it, my first connection to China was actually as a child. Now, anybody that's of my age, say of about 45 upwards, will remember a TV program called Monkey. You know, the god monkey who guides the child Tripitaka across the world to go and get the sacred Buddhist books and bring them back to civilization and teach everybody the way to live. Well, that's actually based on a book, which was written 500 years ago. You can buy the English translation of it. But the book itself is actually based on a true story. There was actually a man who went from Xi'an in China, which is way over at this side, all the way across China, through Tibet, down into India, all the way down India, spent several years in India, went back up, back into China, back to his home city. And he actually brought Buddhism, which is, I mean, if there's any religion that bears any similarity in any way with meditation and beliefs, I always think it's Buddhism. Just because they understand. If you go to any pagoda and speak to the monks, tell them that you're a spiritualist, they'll be able to relate to the things that we as spiritualists believe in. Now, while I was in China, I made a point of going to 2 pagodas that are both dedicated to this man. So, wrapping up from China, the main area that I'm going to talk about is the United States, because they are the ones where it all started. And they are the ones that you would think would have a movement. So let's go back to the honeymoon. My wife and I did our research. We found the Manhattan Spiritualist Church, and we arranged to go on their monthly service. Now, this is a real spiritualist church. And please understand that this is not a typical American spiritualist church, but this was our first experience of spiritualism in America. And although this is not a typical spiritualist church, it will identify some of the issues that you will find with spiritualism if you go there. So the church actually, they don't have their own property. They hire a church. I think it's a Korean church that they hire. I mean, New York, Manhattan is multicultural, to say the least. And the service would be recognized as any type of Christian service, but not a spiritualist service. They had hymns. They had a woman standing up who was basically a semi-professional opera singer singing for about 15 minutes, hymn after hymn after hymn. Then we had the spiritual address, which lasted for about 20-25 minutes. And at no point, I mean, Ying and I were expecting to have a medium up on they call it gateway, we call it platform. We were expecting the medium to be up on platform. No. Finally, about 5 minutes before the close of the service, the medium gets up and gives 2 messages. And each message lasts for between 1 and 2, excuse the fingers, between 1 and 2 minutes. And they are the most crappy, excuse my language, and I know we're supposed to be being positive and spiritualist, but they were the worst messages I've ever seen anybody give. It was a case of, coming to you, I've got your mother, she says have a nice day, she loves you, goodbye. I've got your father, these are not the actual messages, remember this is a decade ago, but that was it. Then we were invited upstairs if we wanted to come up for a sandwich and get a spiritualist reading. Okay, fine, we've come this far. So we went upstairs. Now, by the end of the evening, between the two of us, we had spent $90. The donation, which we don't mind, the sandwich cost, the tea, that was another $10 or $15. Then the reading was another, I can't remember the exact amount, so don't add it up, I'm just doing this from memory. But we spent $45 for each one of us. Can you imagine any church service anywhere in the United Kingdom having 2 people travel around the world to come to your service and charging everybody in the service, including the people that were quite clearly not your locals, to say the least, $45, £40? I mean, your bank balance would be very healthy. And I'm not against churches charging money. It seemed a little bit excessive. So anyway, we sat down. They formed it wasn't a circle, you know, it's not a circle where everybody's working, but they sat in a circle of about 20 people and they went round and gave a message. And again, the standard of the messages was unbelievable. I got told I had I can't even remember the message, but basically I got told about my aura and what this meant and what kind of personality I was. It was basically a psychic reading, not a spiritual reading. And even as a psychic reading, you know, what colour's my aura? Yeah, I could do that myself. I could get any medium that I meet anywhere in the world to sit down and do that for 60 seconds. I don't want to pay 20, 25 pounds to be told what my aura is. I want a real spiritualist message. And my wife got something similar. Then afterwards, obviously by this point they had figured out. I did ask a few direct questions about what they were doing, and I think they got the impression I was less than impressed by this point. They all, of course, started coming up, and we got introduced to everybody in the church. Hello, this is Reverend such and such, our treasurer. Hello, this is Reverend such and such, our church founder. Hello, this is Reverend such and such, our medium. Notice the Reverend. I'll come back to that later. So anyway, we finished up and we left. On the way out, 5 individual people came up to me, asked for a private reading. Now, I was on my honeymoon, and this was way into my past 10 years. I was still sitting in circle. I could probably have managed to give them readings at the stage I was at, but didn't have the confidence, wasn't about to do it, and I certainly wasn't about to spend a night of my honeymoon working my way through 5 private readings. So sorry, goodbye, farewell. So we had let's just say we had a very, very initial negative impression about spiritualism. We went up to Buffalo. Now, Buffalo as a city is similar. It has a population of about 250,000 people. You would expect any city in Britain. I mean, I was speaking to Lawrence earlier, and he said you've got 5 churches in Poole. I don't know what the population of Poole is, but I doubt it's 250,000. But correct me if I'm wrong. Correct me if I'm wrong there, Lawrence. But you've got 5 churches. We couldn't find a single spiritualist church in the whole of Buffalo, which really surprised us. Anyway, we got in our car, we drove for an hour and a half to a small place called Hydesville. Now, if you know your history, Hydesville is the location of the Fox sisters, who in the I think it was 64, 65, started doing what is called the first recognized mediumship readings. And that's basically where the modern spiritualist churches movement all point back to where it started. I would disagree with that. I think spiritualism was starting all over the world at the same time, but this is the recognized starting point, so fine. Now, the actual location itself, if you're ever in America, I highly recommend that you go to it. It's immaculate. It's about 3 acres in size. It's perfectly kept, trees, bushes, it has a stream running down the side. The original location of the cottage, all that remains of it are the foundations, and they've built a sort of wooden glass house over it to protect it. There's also a shop there. I've never actually been able to time my visits. I've been there 4 times now. I've never actually been able to time my visit with the shopkeeper, the woman that does all the day-to-day maintenance. But that aside, it's the only place in America I've ever gone where I can honestly say I can sit down and meditate and feel enormous spiritual energy. Now, there are other locations I'm going to discuss where you will get spiritual energy, but nothing on the scale of this location. Now, I know there's a lot of controversy in the past. Were the Fox sisters real? Were they fraudsters? You know, it's probably sometimes they were for real, and as they went through life, they were the first people. They tried to compensate for they didn't know what they were doing. So there's probably a combination of reality in the accusations and the truth. But what I can say is that the spiritual energy at that location is incredible. If you're ever in America, if you're ever in New York State, it is seriously worthwhile taking the time of flying into Buffalo or flying to Toronto because it's cheaper, and drive down from Toronto. It's about it's a 2-hour drive to Buffalo from Toronto. Stay overnight. It would cost you about $60 for a hotel, and then drive up to Hydesville for the day, and then drive back down. As I said, I've gone back 3 more times after the first visit. So jump forward a year, and I finally found a spiritualist church in Buffalo. So, hallelujah. Made contact with the medium that was running the church. Now, in her own words, I'm not going to name her because I don't want to be negative about people, but in her own words, I run this church to help develop my mediumship business. It's basically a one-woman show. She does a service once a month, and it's a recognizable service. Don't get me wrong, I'm not being critical. It is a recognizable spiritualist service. There are some significant differences between what they do in a normal church, in an American church, and in a UK church. But that was my first contact with a real medium and a real spiritualist church. Now, why is it so difficult to find spiritualist churches? Well, 2 reasons. Number 1, there's so few of them. And number 2, every other church out there uses the word spiritualist in its title. If you go into Google and if you type in Buffalo, Niagara Falls, New York, type spiritualist church, you'll get a list of 100 churches coming up. And that's because just about every form of church, like evangelists, use the word spiritualist in their title. So the best place to start is on Facebook, and you really do have to do your research before you contact the church. Look at their page and make sure that they are a real spiritualist church. Now, I said there's few of them. Let's go back and think about some numbers. Now, obviously, this depends on how you define a British UK church. I'm defining a church as any group of people that meet on a regular basis, let's say once a week, a couple of times a month, and have a platform service with a medium, maybe a divine service, maybe just pure readings, and they're inviting mediums to come in, what you and I would recognize as a real church. New York State has a population of approximately 19.4 million. Remember, this is the state where spiritualism started. Scotland, because obviously that's where I am, so that's where I know the numbers. I don't think anybody's ever counted the number of churches here in Scotland, and it'll be the same across the UK. But my best guess is there is somewhere between 300 and 400 churches in Scotland with a population of 5.5 million. So just work that out per capita. How many people we have in Scotland, UK, if you can work out the similar numbers per church, to a state in New York that has almost 4 times the population of Scotland and has 8 churches. Well, actually, they've got 12, but 4 of them I'm ignoring, and I'll come back to that in a second. So if spiritualists in America have so few churches, where do they go? How do they find spiritualism? I mean, here in the UK, we effectively have an industry. Let's call it that. We have an industry, a movement of churches. I mean, you've got 5 churches in Poole. Where I'm sitting just now, in Bowness, small town, 20,000 people, there's a church that meets in a club. It's a club, a scout hall once a week. And it's a recognizable church service every Wednesday evening. Within 15-minute drive, if I drove a circumference around where I stay, there are 12 churches. Now, remember, I'm not in the middle of the Highlands, but I'm not including any churches in Edinburgh. I am a good 15 minutes drive from Edinburgh. So 15 minutes, not including any churches in Edinburgh, drive from where I am, there are 12 active churches. That includes churches that meet in a town hall or a scout hall once a week, through to churches like yourself that own their own property. There's probably 5 that own their own property in that direction, about 5 to 10 minutes drive. So coming back to the question, where do people in America find their spiritualism? Well, some are lucky enough to be close to churches. So let's put that aside for the moment. I will come back to the churches. The second group are psychic fairs. The third group are shops. I'll come back to that. And the fourth group are what we call background noise you find on Facebook. And I'll come back to that. So the church service. Let's just wrap up with the churches before I move on to the other sections. Churches service, and I'm talking about real spiritualist churches here. I'm not talking about Manhattan. I'm now a member of 2 churches that I'm quite happy to put on my sleeve and say I'm a member of this church. And I've worked on platform in both of these churches. The services have a number of differences. Now, I've already covered some of them. The address. Now, the address typically in a real church is about 20 minutes. And you do it with you actually have written notes, and you're expected to read a speech out. If you do it the way that we would do it, open up to Spirit, stand up, and just let Spirit guide you to give that message, they hate it. There's a reason for it, and I'll come back to that in a second. The second difference is with spiritual healing. Now, you had your moment with the spiritual prayer opening up to give out healing energy. And I'm quite sure that your church has spiritual healers. I have a lot of respect for spiritual heroes. I'm not a healer. I can heal, but it's not the way that I've been directed. It's not the way I've chose to use. I'm not going to call them talents. It's not the way that I've chosen to work for Spirit. In the UK, you'll be quite familiar. You have a private one-to-one healing. It's not a service. Let's call it a meeting where. In Dunfermline Church, where I'm a member, we do this on the Monday evening. I'm quite sure you have the equivalent in your church. They do it in the service. So what happens is the person running the service says, okay, we're going to do our healing. Would all the healers come up? So the last church service I was in had about 75 to 80 people in the congregation. 12 healers then stand up and go up to the top of the church hall. They then position themselves around the church. And anybody that wants a healing while they play music goes up and gets touch healing. Now, there's nothing wrong with that. I mean, if that's the way that works for them, and if that's the way that Spirit has guided them to work, then fine. Let them work, let them do that. But for me personally, coming from the background in the UK, I just find that very difficult because there's a follow-on consequence in the church service from this. So do your mental arithmetic. We've had all the normal bits and pieces, the introduction from the service, 10 minutes. We've had the hymns, 5 to 10 minutes, let's say 10 minutes. We've had the address, 20 minutes. We've now had healing for maybe 10, 15 minutes. How much time does that leave for the medium to come up and give the direct messages? Now, you don't work on platform in America. The terminology that they use is gateway. So you're standing up, giving exactly the same types of message that you would do on a service here in Scotland. But you've only got, in a good service, 15 minutes. Even in a good church service, on occasions I've been told limit it to 5 minutes because we don't have enough time today. Now I'm sorry, but as a spiritualist, as a working church medium, I find that attitude in any church to be absolutely horrific. So that leads me into the second way that people find spiritualism. Well, it's quite simple. You hire a bus, you get 100 of you, however many on the bus, and you drive to the town. America has 3 spiritualist towns. The one that I'm the most familiar with is Lilydale. Now that's actually south of Buffalo, about 45 minutes drive south of Buffalo. There's one in Florida, which can't remember how they name it. I'm looking through my notes here. Here we go. I'm going to do my best to pronounce this. Cassagiga. Cassadaga. Now, if you do a search for them, I've never been there, so I can't make any comments about the town. But if you do search for them on Google or Facebook, the caption that they describe themselves as is the spiritual capital of the world, quote unquote. Now, there's also one in California, which I don't know the name of. An American medium that I communicate with did tell me the name of it, and I'm sorry, but I forgot to get the name of it. But I'm going to go back to Lilydale, which is the one that I have the most experience with. Lilydale was founded shortly after the time of the Fox sisters. So it dates back about 100, 140, 150 years. And it's a real town. Probably an oversized village, actually. It's about 300 houses. The land is owned by an organization called the Lilydale Assembly, and you buy your house, but you have to rent the land. And you have to be licensed to live there. Now, to be licensed there, you have to be able to prove that you've been a member of a spiritualist church for a year. So, you know, we're talking closed community. To live there, you have to be a spiritualist. The advantage of living there, of course, is that you can, if you are an approved medium, of which they have about 80, it's a bit like the national, in Scotland, just to explain, in Scotland, we're very freestyle. The churches train the mediums, and we don't have any sort of central recognized authority that is recognized to pass exams to be a medium. I know that's different, what you call it, the National Union of Spiritualists. I know you have that down in England. We do have churches that are affiliated to that in Scotland, but they don't follow the training methodology. We're very, very independent. You know, I'm not an SNP, but the independence, the attitude does even run through the spiritualist churches in the way that we work. But to work in Lilydale, you have to test yourself and be approved. Then you'll get a license to call yourself an approved medium. And they put a plaque on their house. So the buses drive up, the people get off, they pay $10 to get into the town. If they come through the season, which I'll come back to in a second, they can then walk around, find an approved medium, knock on the door or book in advance and get a reading. Cost of a reading in today's exchange rate is about £75 from an approved medium. Now, they have the season, which runs, roughly speaking, from about June through to about October. If you've got any, I grew up in Edinburgh, and I live, as I said, 15 minutes drive outside of Edinburgh. In the month of August, you have the Edinburgh Festivals, you have the Fringe. Now, anybody that wants any serious career in the UK and acting in any way at some point has done a Fringe show. You know, it's like just proving you've. In America, if you want to work as a medium, for credibility's sake, you have to at some point gone to Lilydale and done something in the season. Now, what do you do? Workshops, circles, training courses, work on platform. They have a platform there which they claim is the biggest platform for spiritualist activities in the world. It can seat 5,000 people, and I'm not joking, it's huge. You book that and you sell tickets. And it's all organized. They have an office that produces a paper catalogue of all the events during the season. You have to book yourself 2 years in advance to get into that particular season. And they've got a mailing list, which probably accounts for about 40 to 50% of the serious medium spiritualists across North America. And it gets posted out and people pay for various events and come. The town has a hotel. It has a fire station, it has a post office. This is a fully working town. And during the season, you have to pay to get into the town. They basically make enough money during the season to finance everything in the town. Now, it's a nice town. The best way to picture it is if you've ever been to a Tudor village in England, I can't remember the name of it, but there's one I used to go to just outside of Torquay. Go down to Kent, you'll find them all over the place. You know, the thatched roof cottages, etc. That's Lilydale. That's what all the houses look like. It's on the side of a lake. If they ever sold up and sold the land, they'd make a fortune. If a developer ever got hold of the land and developed it as a holiday resort, they'd make a fortune. And there are real spiritualists there. I've got some very, very good friends there that I would say are spot-on spiritualists. They also, for the town of 300 houses, now remember the numbers that I gave you. This town of 300 houses has 4 active spiritualist churches. So that's 4 churches in one town, concentrated into this one oversized village. You can actually, if you look on my websites or do a search for me on Facebook, you'll find an address that I gave in a church in Lilydale last year where I was highly critical. And I basically, at the end of it, I asked the congregation, are you a medium? Put your hands up. So 10 hands went up. And I asked how many of them were working in churches outside of Lilydale. And I just, went down how many times in the last year. There was only one medium in that church had done more than 10 platform events in the last year. I think on a personal basis, I had done 10 in the previous 3 months. And how many mediums do you know that are similar to that would do similar numbers? How many people are church mediums that would have done that number? So my criticism of Lilydale is it's too insular. They should take what they're doing, and they should take it, even if just once a year, they went out into another town and they supported somebody in that town setting up a church. People coming to Lilydale, if they just set up some sort of training course to teach them how to run a church, how to set up a church and do it properly. Okay, so towns. It does lead into a question, how do you actually become a medium in America? But I'll come back to that in a second after I cover the other two ways of finding spiritualism. Shops. Yeah, we all know what spiritualist shops are like. You can go in, you can buy cards, you can buy crystals, and it's probably owned by a medium who will do private readings, etc. You probably find one per town, maybe, and I don't know, I'm guessing, I haven't looked up on Google, but in a town the size of Poole, I would expect there to be two such shops. Go to New York State, go to New York City, go for a walk, just open up your eyes and look. Every block has a shop. And okay, they come under various descriptions, astrologers, psychic, spiritual, but they're all pretty much the same. There's somebody in there, some sort of medium, doing some sort of reading, maybe doing it for drama, putting the head hat on, etc. But they're there, so there's a demand there. The next way that you find spiritualism is by going to a fair. Now, I don't know what fairs are like locally in England, but here in Scotland, we have Edinburgh and Glasgow. There's two companies. One runs them in Edinburgh, one runs them in Glasgow. And you pay, as a medium, to hire it. I do this. To hire a table there, you would spend about £100, £150 for 2 days. And you don't make a fortune, but you give maybe 20 readings over 2 days, get a chance to see other mediums, and you walk away probably enough money to justify doing it as professionally as a medium if you're tolerant of that. There are two big psychic affairs in England which I've never been to. One is run in the London, I think it's the Expo Centre, and one is run in the National Exhibition Centre. There is a psychic fair bigger than those two fairs every 2 weeks in America. There are mediums in America. I know one of them who's a personal friend who basically every 2 weeks goes to one of those fairs and hires a table. Now I did it, I actually hired a table at one of those fairs when I was in America in March. Cost £500 to hire the table. But it's still worth it because a typical fair will have somewhere around about 3,000 people visit it. But you're not there, if you go to the big fairs here in Scotland, you'll maybe get between 5 and 10 what are called readers at the fairs, mediums. A typical fair in America will have 30 to 40, maybe even 50 readers there. And they're booked solid. I mean, when I was there, I was doing readings. There were people waiting to get readings and they were turning away and walking away. I was criticized because I was spending too much time doing readings with the people that I was doing. The people needed the readings. And I wasn't there primarily to make money. I just wanted the experience to see what it was like. And I have to say, it was mind-blowing. It is a commercial business. There are not a huge number, but there's probably about 400 or 500 professional mediums that go around these fairs, and they're typically earning, after all their expenses, maybe £2,000 a month working as a medium, going to nothing but fairs. And they may or may not be running shops at the same time. So the final way that you find spiritualism in America is what we also experience here in the overall, but this is where it comes from, Facebook. Now, I'm not going to sit here and spend the rest of this talk talking about Facebook, but just go into Facebook, do a search, and you'll find, I mean, for example, I answered somebody this morning. It was a simple post in one of the groups. Oh, I'm spiritually lost. I need love in my life. Am I ever going to find love? What do I have to do spiritually to find love? So I just typed a simple one line. Now, my identity on Facebook is Mark Stewart Medium, so it's quite clear that I'm a medium. I just typed a one-liner, go join an online dating site, full stop. And that's from the medium. So I'm running out of time, so I'm going to try speeding up a wee bit because I've still got a lot to get through. How do you become a medium in America? Here in the UK, you go to a church, you sit in circle, you go to after circles, you go out with a medium as a fledgling, and then when you're ready, the churches invite you to come and work. Quite straightforward, wherever you are, whatever church you're a member of. You've got a number of different ways of becoming a recognized medium in America. You can go through the church. Now, typically, the church will charge you $3,000 to put you through the training course to be a medium. You can go to a private college. There are quite a large number of organizations that are doing mediumship training, spiritual training. A 2-year to go through all the courses to get all the certificates and recognition, $10,000. Or you can go to one of those shops and sit in one of their circles. Typical cost per circle, $20. Now, at current exchange rates, that's about £2,700 to go through the church, about £8,000 to go through the college, about £17, £18 to go to a circle. Think about it. To become a medium, you have, I mean, I don't know, it's different for different people, but weekly circle, every week, £100 a month just to go to the circle. And that's doing it through that's through somebody running a circle. Now, the training that they give in the circle, here's an example of some training that was actually given in a circle that I attended. I want you to taste this jam. That's apricot. I want you to taste this jam. That's raspberry. I want you to taste this jam. That's blueberry. And I sat there and kept my mouth shut. And then at the end of it, I said to the woman that was doing the training, why are you doing that? Oh, because, you know, excuse my terminology, I'm dyslexic. I can't remember what it is, but you know how taste, spirit might give you the taste. So they need to be able to recognize different tastes so that they can tell people what they're tasting. To which my response was, are you joking? Spirit works with different people in different ways. Spirit will work out with you in the circle how to communicate with you, and they'll give you experiences in your life that you can interpret for the person that you're giving the reading to. There's no point sitting there learning how to recognize different tastes. It's a complete waste of time because Spirit won't work with these people that way. And she couldn't understand it. And then I asked her, why have you not taught them how to open and close? Oh, because we're only on day 3. We're only on day 3 of my training course. I mean, any circle you ever go to, okay, day 1, they're not going to teach you how to open and close and give and receive messages. That takes time. But at the very day 1, they'll teach you how to meditate, and that includes grounding yourself, opening and closing, how to protect yourself in case you go away and do it yourself, which you shouldn't do on your first day in the circle. But that feeds in to the level of mediumship. The first time I was in Lilydale, everybody was coming up to me and saying, oh, you're from Scotland, that's wonderful. Now, I'm used to that because I've been going to America for decades. I remember about 30 years ago, middle of nowhere in the deep south, I was in a shop, said, oh, excuse me, to the woman that had bumped on my shoulder, or I had bumped on her shoulder. 8 people in front of me turned round when they heard the accent. Oh, you're from Scotland. And it was like the parting of the seas, like that. And they let me walk forward and be served. Fine. So the first time I was in Lilydale, I just regarded it like that. It wasn't. They had had a woman from Scotland who had lived in Lilydale, who had now passed into Spirit many, many years before I had lived there. And basically, she was so good. You know, you could walk into the room and she could look from the other side of the room and give you a message. Now, maybe this is secondhand umpteen times, and maybe I'm slightly exaggerating what they said, but that was the way that they regarded this Scottish medium. And to be blunt, what they were saying didn't impress me. I mean, but at this point in my life, I'd probably seen about 40 or 50 mediums in different spiritualist church services, as we all have. And the level of mediumship that we see in our churches is unbelievable compared to what they've got there. In the church that I worked on platform, in another service, I wasn't working in this service, the medium that was supposed to be working hadn't been able to come. So they just got all their mediums to come up for 2 minutes and give messages. So each medium got up and maybe gave 1 or 2. So think about it. one or two messages in 2, 3, 4, 5 minutes. And the quality of the messages, this was a medium who was so recognized as being good that when she stood up, the entire congregation was going like that because she had got up to give messages. Okay, fine. The message she gave was, "Hello, Joseph, your father's here. He wants you to know that he loves you." And then she sat down. And again, everybody went like that. Now, I'm not in any way saying that wasn't the message, but where was the evidence? That, okay, she may have been his next door neighbor, so it may have been very difficult for her to give that evidence to her. But half the people in that church were not regulars. They were people like me that were coming. You know, remember I described the busloads coming. There were people that were coming to visit that church, and they were seeing these as evidence of spiritual messages. So they were basically sitting there saying, "That's not a message, there's no evidence," and going away totally unconvinced. Our primary function as mediums in a spiritual church is, yes, it's to give messages to people, but the purpose of that, in my opinion, is to give evidence that there is life after death. That is the fundamental of being a medium in spiritualism. I didn't see one message out of all those mediums that stood up and gave the message that convinced me that they were real, that there was life after death. So coming back to where I started with describing this, the standard of mediumship that you will find is very low. Don't get me wrong, there are very good mediums. I've met some that I would quite happily recommend to come and work in your church. But the standard overall is very low. And yet there are huge numbers of people that want to be spiritualists, that want to be mediums. So take that demand, take the level of support and quality that they've got, put the two of them together, and that's where a lot of the background noise that you see on Facebook actually comes from. Now, I think I'm running out of time. It's 12 o'clock. I've talked a wee bit longer than I planned. Does anybody have any questions before we wrap up?
Mark, no questions at the moment, just on a personal level. Funnily enough, the way they work, some of the things are very pertinent to something that I'm setting up for an online experience. Very interesting to hear the experiences in America. It's been a concern of mine, and I'm sure quite a few people watching as well, that the commercialism side, you know, every medium's got to earn a living. I fully get that. I really, really get that. But, you know, we are living in a culture and a society now where it seems that the more you pay for something, the better it is. And my experience most certainly with spiritualism is the mediums that we have on our platforms within the churches, the length and the breadth of this country. And we're talking people, normal people, humble lives, never been to any great school of teaching or whatever, have just learnt their craft with the teachers and with spirit, most importantly, and go out there and do that job. You know, give that evidence, give that love, bring that healing in. I'm a very big exponent that all mediums are healers, despite our own conceptions of what a healer operates on. I believe very strongly that that communication is healing, not only for the person sat here receiving that message, also for the spirit giving it. You know, if we've parted on bad terms after a row or something, sooner or later you want to say, do you know what, I'm sorry. Do you know what, I'm sorry I was a bad dad. I'm sorry, you know, I didn't give you that love. I'm sorry I wasn't there. You know, and just to say sorry. And that is the medium's job, is to convey that energy and that upliftment to both parties. We have a duty to the person in front of us and the person stood to our back. But yeah,
I couldn't agree more.
Yeah, thoroughly interesting. Few people were questioning sort of like the topic of today and the understanding of it. You know, the divinity within comes in many, many forms, shapes and guises. Hearing somebody express their opinions and their views, it may be reinforce something that you've been thinking yourself, which is wonderful. And you know what? I always say this, if you don't agree with it, bravo, because you've got your own philosophy. And I applaud that. There is no one size philosophy fits all. It comes in many guises, many ways, many shapes. It may be a piece of art, it may be a piece of music, well be a talk as we're having today. It's sharing, it's understanding, it's stimulating, because we should be growing, we should always be moving with our thoughts, our approaches and our mindsets. I always liken life to water. If water sits there still, it becomes stagnant, nothing happens. Life is a continual flowing river, as is our understanding, as is our way of working and perception of spirit.
Can I just interject there?
Please,
Can I just interject there with just one
please
final
shut me
little
up.
story to wrap up? No, it's okay. About 2 years ago, I met a medium in America who, the minute we met, okay, let me just explain how we met. I was actually there on business. I invest in property in the area now. I stepped off the plane. I was in Niagara Falls, and there was a Celtic fair. So Scotsman Celtic fair. I went, and 2,000 Americans running around kilts that were too short. You know that if you know Scottish kilts, you know that men wear them below the knees and women wear them above the knees. So the 8 men that I saw that were wearing kilts to the right level, I was walking up and congratulating with the Scottish accent. And I was about to leave, and I saw this stall that was selling tourist knickknacks that you would get in any shop in the high street in Edinburgh. And there was a pile of spiritual books. So of course I walked over, picked up the books, bought 3 of them. The shop assistant, the stall assistant said, "Oh, you're Scottish?" I said, "Yes." "Oh, I'm Scottish." And I was expecting it to be, my great-great-grandfather. It wasn't. She was actually Scottish, had been brought up in America, and she went home to Inverness for a month every year to stay with her grandparents. So I said, "Oh, I'm actually a Scottish medium." "Oh, my boss is a medium, and she's giving a reading behind the curtain." So I stood there for half an hour, and I met a woman called Patty, who was a real medium. The minute we met, it was like that, just instant energy. And of course, I got to know her. I now work with her when I go to the States. And I said to her, "You've got to come to Scotland." So she came. About 8 months later, she and the girl came over to Scotland. I arranged about 5 visits around churches on recommendation. She went to them. She even ended up working on platform in one of the churches. Since she's gone back, she's basically started using what she calls Scottish British methodologies that she picked up from our circles that she sat in. And she says, "It's unbelievable what I've been able to take back to America." And she's now, I'm supporting her, but she's now trying to teach other mediums to do the same. So it's just a case of what were the chances of me being there, meeting that woman at that time, of me seeing those spiritualist books and just taking those 2 seconds. Leave that with you.
Yeah, how true, Mark. I always say, especially when it's applied to the trance fields, I know sometimes we have a bit of discourse between different trance teachings. The answer is there are as many schools of thought in spirit as there are stars in the sky. You find the one that suits you and you go along with it. But what you don't do is attack the others. You accept,
Agreed.
understand and move on. And if the world could adopt that philosophy, it could be quite interesting. Wonderful saying the other day. Somebody had written about life in the spirit lands, and I'm quite interested in that because I never see it. I never see where spirit are, I just get spirit. And somebody said, well, actually, the spirit world is very much like Earth, but only if it had followed the teachings and examples of Jesus and all the great avatars that we've had throughout time. And I thought, how interesting is that? What a wonderful thought. Anyway, Mark, sir, beautiful day. Beautiful, beautiful, beautiful. Held the numbers very, very well, which is no indictment of your prowess in your field, but it's heartwarming to see that people actually manage to maintain that hour's attention, because we are very much of I've got about as much attention span as my cat, dangles something, I'll look at it for 2 minutes and then I'm off. Mark, beautiful, beautiful, uplifting, interesting. Spiritualism is about teaching and understanding and discussion. And we really are in that time that actually we really do need to have grown-up conversations about things, you know? Not going in attacking, just discussing in an openness. And it's wonderful
Agreed.
hearing from you. Wonderful hearing from you.
It was a pleasure.
If I could ask you, please, sir, for the closing prayer.
Certainly. Dear Father, Mother, Spirit, thank you very much to everyone that came in to listen. And hopefully they'll have different opinions, and hopefully they'll think about it. And if I'm wrong, please have them let me know. We have generated energy here today just simply by being in a divine service. We haven't given any readings today. That was not our intention. So please use the energy to help. Somewhere in this world, there is someone that needs excruciating help. Please find them, and please use the energy that we have generated here today in whatever way is appropriate. Whether it's a knock on the door, whether it's healing, whether it's stopping somebody, whatever is necessary. Even if the person that's getting the help doesn't understand why they're being helped or how they're being helped. Please deliver that miracle on our behalf. Amen.
Amen. Wonderful prayer, Mark. Absolutely wonderful. I'll very quickly round off with the notices for the week. On Monday night at 7 o'clock, we invite you to join in on the online meditation. This is always a very short meditation, just a 5-minute chill time. If you can join it live, wonderful. If you want to watch it on catch up, absolutely fine. That's Monday at 7. Tuesday and Thursdays at 9 p.m, not an online event, but we invite you to sit and to send out your healing thoughts and prayers to link in with the church healers who all sit at that time. So you can spiritually share that time, that meditation, and that moment of healing for yourselves and for others. Wednesday at 3 o'clock, we have Jason Dean Rothwell taking our service. This Friday at 7 o'clock, we've got a special on. It's a talk on the paranormal with Angie and Keith Freeland, who will be joining us from Tenerife. On Saturday night at 7 o'clock, we have one of my personal favourites. I shouldn't have them, but I do, because underneath all of this, I'm a human being. And we've got Dr. Robert Berendt joining us from Germany, and he will be talking of his experiences with physical mediumship. Next Sunday, right back to home, we've got the lovely Sarah Try that again. Sarah Birch taking our service at 11 o'clock. Those of you local to the area will know Sarah from her work within the platforms in the area, and also have her time as steward of the Bournemouth Spiritualist Church. So that's the notices for the week. I'd like to thank you all for watching. I can see the numbers dropping. Everybody's running out for a cup of tea or an alleviation. That's absolutely great. Mark, real pleasure absolutely hearing from you, sir. I'm very, I feel a kinship there. I feel, yeah, I'll be interested to see what the future holds for all. Sir, thank you so much.
Keep in touch, definitely. You're very welcome. It's been a pleasure.
Absolutely, sir. Absolutely. Wonderful. Thank you all for joining. Thank you so much. Bless your hearts. What I always say, look after yourselves. Stay safe, stay sane. And if, you know, look after yourselves. All right. There's so much confusion going on at the moment. Do you know what? Trust your instincts. If something doesn't feel right, it probably isn't. All right. Love you all. Miss you all. Oh, very quickly. Reopening for personal prayer as from tomorrow. 2 sessions, 1 to 1:30, 2 till 2:30. These will have to be ticketed at the moment to control the numbers. So there are 4 free tickets available online through the event page. There is no fee. As I said, it's going to have to be control. You know, we are very good as a human race of trying to negotiate things at the moment regarding our safety. You know, my favourite line, the "our butts" are creeping in already. My opinion is, as far as there's a very fixed point, it exists to do one thing, and that is to grow, to multiply, and to spread. We can negotiate as much as we like with it. It's just going to continue doing its thing, and in light of that, the numbers here will have to be very strictly controlled. We're starting off small, because like all things, when you plan them through, it looks wonderful on paper. In actuality, we may have missed something. That's fine. Starting off small, little baby steps, building up to actually having services back within the church. So the tickets are available on the church Facebook page on the events tab. I've put in the rest of the months. It will be Sunday and Monday, but it commences tomorrow. Please book a ticket. As I said, totally free. You do not have to pay. It's just a method of controlling that I'm not going to end up with a huge phalanx of people suddenly turning up en masse. All right. Love you all. Miss you all. Look forward to seeing you all either online or face to face. And have a wonderful day. It's looking to be a gorgeous week again.